Hello, everybody. Hello, beautiful marketing people. If you are here with us today, it's because you have influencers on the mind. If you have influencers on your mind, that makes you a very smart marketer, because influencer marketing is a freight train rolling through the industry. If you're not on board, this is your chance to get the basics, get some insider tips that'll make you crush influencer marketing as it rolls on through your marketing strategies this year. 22% of marketers say influencer marketing is their most cost-effective customer acquisition channel. That's huge. If you're not already on board, this is your call to get on board. 59% are going to be increasing their budget over the next 12 months. And here's the stat that's really going to knock your socks off. Businesses are making $6.50 in revenue for every dollar that they spend on influencer marketing. You can't wait. This is your call to action. Get on board the train. It's rolling on through. And this live stream here is going to give you a lot of tips and tricks to make it so that you get on that train and you're successful from day one. And to make sure that we get all this good information out to you, I have with me today the amazing Blake Vita. He works for gen.video. Blake is a wonder. He is very experienced in influencer campaign. He's worked with some of the best and the brightest. We're so glad to have him here. Welcome, Blake.
Thank you, Theresa. Yeah, as Theresa said, I'm Blake Vita. I'm the Director of Marketing for gen.video. For those who haven't heard of us, we are a social commerce platform that ties in influencer marketing into the e-commerce world with sales tracking, retail syndication, and some other creative methods.
Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing platform. And again, you have a great depth of knowledge on this topic. So I'm so excited to share all the things that you have learned on your journey with our audience to make sure that they are going to be able to be successful in their influencer campaigns from day one. Today, we're really going to focus a lot on e-commerce businesses, on e-commerce businesses of all sizes, but we really want to make sure that those with that starting budget that are just getting started have what they need to get that going and do it right the first time. So what we're going to jump into, Blake, is just kind of talking about what the basics are. What are the steps that I have some money? Let's say I got $5,000 to $10,000. I'm an e-commerce brand. I'm dipping my toe into the influencer marketing arena. What is the first thing I need to do? What are the steps I need to put in place to make sure that this goes off without a hitch?
Yeah, great question. There are some steps that you have to keep in mind before you even start your influencer program. Obviously, the first one that we're talking about here is budget. So if you have a budget between 5 and 10K, you already know where you're at with that, which is amazing. The second one is you have to figure out what you want to see out of the program. So what are your KPIs? Do you want to see people click through to your e-com site? Are you just looking for brand awareness? Are you looking for influencers to make some amazing content that you could then repurpose in other areas? There are many different ways that you can utilize influencers to improve your marketing efforts. It really just depends on you and what you're looking to do with them. To actually run campaigns, there are a couple key steps. The first one is discovery. So how you find the influencers that are right for you. There are influencers on various different platforms that make various different types of content and appeal to very different types of people, even where they live, or like I said, what kind of audiences they have. It's very important to figure out which influencers are going to be right for you before you even start looking for them, because the influencer database is very vast and there are people that cover a lot of bases. So narrowing that down to who you want to even look for in the first place is going to save you a ton of time, especially if you have those smaller budgets, which probably means you're working with a smaller team. The time is definitely of the essence there. So discovery is the first one. The second one is how you're going to manage influencers. We'll go over a lot of these more in depth, but there are a lot of different phases to actually managing influencers for your campaigns. So you have to worry about the contracts, how you're going to pay them, how you're going to track the analytics, and based off those KPIs that we mentioned earlier, how are we going to track those? How are we going to see how many clicks that we got on a random Instagram post that an influencer makes for us? So managing them, keeping the communication up with them. So if you want to email them to communicate, or if you want to even have phone calls with them, you could do that. There are several platforms like gen.video that can help with this kind of stuff as well. We can go into that a little bit later. And then the last ones, we have discovery, we have managing, and then just measuring performance. So we kind of dug into that a little bit on the managing side, but seeing which influencers are performing the best is going to be very crucial for going into future influencer programs. So if you're using 10 influencers that are pretty similar, say if you're a fashion brand and you have 10 Instagrammers making a fashion photo for you, just seeing which 2 or 3 of those 10 perform the best can be a huge increase to ROI in future programs, because you can use those 2 or 3 and then maybe shuffle around the other 7 to see if you can find people that can duke it out with those 2 or 3 in terms of ROI.
No, that's fantastic. And I have to tell you, breaking it down in steps just makes the whole process seem more manageable. It all starts with creating the campaign. It all starts with deciding what you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it. One of the things I found really interesting in leading up to this chat with you, Blake, was the mediums that are available. So, we're the day of just paying someone to do a post for you, to put out some text or an image. Those days are, obviously, there's still a ton of people doing posts and text content within and images, but video, I was just shocked at how video is taking off. And that's not just Reels and TikTok, but that's also live selling, which has been super interesting. So these are kind of exciting new things that marketers need to put on their plate when they're deciding on their campaign. They really need to weigh video as the phenomenon that it is. What are you telling people when it comes to picking the right medium and the right platform for their campaigns?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it definitely depends on your product or service. So for instance, and we love to use this example because we have a lot of amazing consumer electronics clients here at gen.video. So if you're selling a laptop, for example, you have to go over a lot of different features with that laptop. So it's got like different processor, then other ones it has a different frame rate during playing video games or whatever you're trying to market with that laptop. A photo probably won't get the message across with all the different features compared to a video where an influencer, a tech influencer, can go in and run through all the different features. They can show themselves playing a game so people can not only hear about the graphics card or whatever other feature it might be, they can actually see it in action, and it'll convey a better message, and the influencer can, or the end consumer can do better product research with more information that they have. Video has developed so much over the years, and you're totally right. Influencer marketing and a lot of different marketing efforts actually started with a lot of text. So blog posts or tweets or Facebook posts, those are still relevant in some industries, but with the new platforms that have come out like TikTok and new features like Instagram Reels and just YouTube being the giant that it is, and live streaming platforms like Twitch, there's so many unique ways that you can tie into video. It doesn't have to only be this long form content. You can also tie in these shorter form platforms that are giants in the space like TikTok and Instagram, like I mentioned before.
Well, I think too, especially when you're talking about influencer campaigns, one of the reasons why the move to video is so exciting is because you're literally talking about connecting the face of someone trusted with your brand in a way that, you're making a purchase. So the consumer making a purchase. And, again, you just mentioned a laptop. For most people, that's a significant investment of money. They want to buy the right laptop. So, watching a video, that's great. Now they're learning about the features, but how much better is it and more powerful is it to add that trusted voice onto that video? So not only are they getting everything explained to them, they're getting that from a source that they trust, a face and a voice that they connect with. And so it just seems like such a great match to put that powerful influencer marketing and branding with video, short and long, product demos and reviews and product placements. It just seems like it's just such a powerful way to connect your brand living and breathing on the screen. It's a super exciting time to be doing these kinds of campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why the influencer marketing has grown to be a $16+ billion a year industry, is because of that trust and that connection that people have. It is still good for brands to market by themselves under their own Facebook handles, Instagram handles, all that stuff. It is still important to have a presence there, but nothing beats the having a real face and a real person tied to your product. We used a laptop example. I'll switch that up and we'll say, for example, baby products. If you're advertising a new baby baby food, and you get real mom influencers that have, 4 or 5 kids, and they're putting their face behind the product saying, hey, I use this food. It means a lot to me. My babies love it, and my babies are healthy and happy, and kind of just showing that real time. That just means a lot more in terms of trust in product research than having a brand just post the product under their own handles.
Right. And I would tell you that, especially as a consumer, we're inundated with so many messages now, so much information. The amount of ads that have increased in the last 10 years for people is just amazing. It's just amazing. When, you post product information, I can give you all the nutrition information for this baby food, but there's, what am I going to do? Ask you to read it and do all the research? No, what shortcuts all of that for me as a consumer is, like you said, that trusted voice of the person that I feel like has done that on my behalf already. So yeah, it's and baby food's such a great example because, that's an area where you're definitely going to want to have a lot of trust.
Definitely.
So if you decided that video, let's just say, for example, we've got our new influencer campaign and we have that budget of $5,000 to $10,000 and we're committed to influencer marketing. We know that we want to have video created. We know that we want to focus on Facebook because that's where our audience is. What would then be the steps to find that influencer? Where am I going to go? I know you talked about, finding them on social. I know we've talked about finding them from inside the user generated content, but what's the first place you go? If you had this budget and you had this goal, where would you go? What would you do?
Yeah, great. Another fantastic question. So influencer discovery can happen in a few different ways. A big way that influencer discovery happens is people will come to you. And this kind of ties into the question that a lot of people have when they first look at influencer marketing. They say, if we're paying an influencer to make a review on a product, how trustworthy can that be because they're getting paid to do it? Well, that's not exactly how it works. The influencers will take campaigns that they agree with and that they, maybe already use the product in their everyday lives and that they believe in. They're not just going to take any campaign because that's how you lose followers, that's how you lose trust, and that's how you lose momentum in growing yourself as an influencer. So in terms of influencer discovery, it could happen in a couple different ways. Again, the baby food example, a mom could already be using that brand of baby food and they could reach out themselves, which happens a lot, saying, hey, I'm an influencer. I have this amount of followers and I already use this brand of baby food. Are you guys interested in doing a promotion? And that happens so much, especially when influencers are trying to grow themselves as an influencer. Like they might be between 10 and 50,000 followers and they're just trying to grow themselves by getting sponsorships and just kind of get their foot in the door. They will reach out to a lot of brands with those offerings themselves. But if you are looking to scale up and say you're a brand that's, has a certain amount of influencers reaching out to you, but either none of them have really fit the bill of what you're looking for, or you're just looking to have a lot more influencers than have been reaching out to you, you can discover them in a few different ways. Depending on how many people that you have on your team that are doing the discovery, you can either search on the social platforms themselves. All the social platforms have amazing features like hashtag searching on Instagram, or YouTube has really great search features that you can look for people that are family oriented or consumer tech oriented, who are talking about specific products in general. So you can find them that way. Or you can use discovery platforms. So in the influencer marketing industry, there are a ton of discovery platforms out there. Gen.video is actually making one ourselves, where you can go in and look for influencers. You can utilize filters. So you can say, I want to find a Facebook influencer with this amount of followers that usually charges this amount of price, has this CTR when they post content, and you can really hammer down who you're looking for. Of course, signing up for an influencer discovery platform does come with a price because it has a lot of convenience and it lets you scale a lot easier. So depending on your exact budgets and your manpower in-house, that really just will dictate on how you do the discovery. One last thing I will say is that is the SaaS side of the business. With smaller budgets, it's harder to get into a managed service side of influencer marketing. So we'll probably talk about that later when we're talking about larger budgets. But there is a side of influencer marketing where you can hire agencies to do everything for you. So the discovery, the managing influencers, the communication, the measurement of results, all of that stuff, companies like Gen.video can do for you. And so you don't have to do any of the legwork, say, if you only have like 1 or 2 people on the team and you don't want to scale in that way.
Right. And, it's great to have a tool. So often though, when we're starting out on something, it's bootstrapping and kind of scrapping as you go to try to learn how to do it before you invest in the tools. So it's an obvious first step that you're going to try to find these influencers. The fact that Blake pointed out that they're going to be coming to you because they already use your product, I think that is the genius takeaway here. Listen to who's already using your products. I can tie social listening and Agorapulse into that as well, and something else we can talk about when we get to bigger budgets and maybe tools. But if you have a social media management platform, you can actually use your listening to pay attention to what's happening already so that you can capitalize that within your own audience. So I think that's a great tip and a great takeaway, especially for people that are just starting out. So we found an influencer now. So Blake, we used all of your tips. We found this awesome influencer. We gave them some product. We let them loose. They made some great content, or they're going to make some great content. What do I need to keep my eye on? Because I've given this person my product and my brand. I've aligned with them. It's a lot of risk for me. What do I do to manage them and stay on top of what's happening to make sure it's going the way I want it to go?
Gotcha. So it is very common in the influencer marketing industry, I'd say in almost every campaign, that an influencer, after you send them product and after you guys have agreed on a price or product compensation, whatever you guys are doing there, that the influencer will make the piece of content after you've given them the guidelines that you want them to follow. They'll send you the piece of content to review and to approve in case there are any revisions or edits. So in most cases, live streaming is a little bit separate there because it's all happening live, so you can't really review the content. But in most cases, you have the chance to review it and to be able to go in and make sure that's exactly brand safe and what you want. Most influencers don't have any issues with brand safety measures or whatever it might be, but it is always good to have that one round of reviews that you can go in and kind of change anything if needed.
No, that's great advice. And approval process is probably something you want to get up front and understand up front when you're securing the influencer, right? So I'm assuming there's some kind of a contract that you're going to lay out where you're going to say, okay, this is what I expect from you. This is what you can expect from me. And definitely you want to make sure that approvals are a part of that governance, because you don't want, everybody needs to be happy with what's going on. And that kind of brings me to think about something else you mentioned, well, how do people trust these reviews if they're being paid to make them? And I think you brought up a good point there. It also ties into this whole managing an approval process. The influencer has skin in the game. They are not just a hired gun. They have a brand that's very precious to them. That is their business. And if they're going to invest that in your brand, they've got skin in the game and their audience knows that. So that back and forth between the brand, it's between both brands is super critical, super good to map out, because both people in this agreement have something to risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I want to tie into everything that we're talking about here is we kind of skipped the contract creation phase. So with influencers, usually there'll be a signed contract between the two entities, just saying, price or creative direction, whatever it might be. When creating a brief for an influencer off of a contract, so say you guys have agreed on everything, and now you're sending them the information that they're going to use to be able to make their posts. So you're including key talking points, kind of what you're thinking for the video, what's important to you. I do want to say that it's important to give the creators as much creative direction as possible. They built their audiences for a reason, and they're successful for a reason. So they know what their audience connects with. A lot of brands we see, and this is something to kind of watch out for as you first start getting into influencer marketing. A lot of brands will try to micromanage too much and say, hey, here are 15 key talking points that I want you to hit. This is exactly how I want you to say it. This is exactly how I want your background to be. This is exactly, all these micromanaging points, which is going to ultimately net you less return over the long run of influencer marketing, because you're not letting the influencer do what they did to grow their audience and to connect to their audience. We want them to make a post that's genuine, that their audience can trust and connect with, that doesn't seem too branded, but still gets some key talking points out to the audience that they need to know.
Right. So all the more reason that you have those clear expectations up front, all the more reason that it's so great that both people have this skin in the game, so that when it comes down to the approvals and that creative collaboration, I think that's a really important thing that it's easy to overlook when you're in the heat of creating a campaign, that this is a creative collaboration between your brand and another brand, and they're going to bring things to the table that are valuable, and you're going to bring things to the table that are valuable. Make sure that's clear up front, and make sure you have a process in place to manage them even beyond those approvals. Part of setting out that contract, like you said, is the frequency. So how many posts are we going to see, and where are they going to be, and all of that. That is something you have to keep your eye on as a marketer. And that ties right into the next piece. So if we're going to manage our influencers and make sure they're hitting these benchmarks that we mapped out clearly in our agreement, now how are we going to measure that after everything's all said and done? How are we going to measure, and what are we going to do with those metrics that we gain? So Blake, in your experience, what are the big metrics that people should keep their eye on, and how do they use those metrics after the campaign is over?
Yeah, great question. So that all, again, it's kind of depends on what you're looking for as a brand. A lot of brands that do influencer marketing, they're looking to increase word of mouth brand awareness about their product. So they're looking to increase the amount of comments, just like straight up impressions. So they're like focusing on CPM. They just want to increase buzz around their product. It might be a new product launching, and they're not necessarily focused on pure sales. So if that's the case, then there are ways to do that. There are ways to contract influencers that have a higher engagement rate than others. Most brands, I would say, especially in the e-commerce world, are focused on pure sales. And there are a couple of different ways to kind of track ROI and to use that. Gen.video has a tool where we can track sales across most major affiliate retailers. So we can say, oh, this influencer got X amount of sales, this influencer got Y amount of sales, and we can kind of optimize a campaign mid-campaign within that. It's just seeing who's performing best on a sales basis. But a lot of influencers, if you're not using a tool like Gen.video with a smaller budget, I think we're still talking about the smaller budgets here. If you're not using a tool to track and manage your campaigns, influencers do have metrics on their end. So whenever they post a video to YouTube or post an image to Instagram, wherever it might be, they can see how those posts did, and they can screenshot and send you metrics if you're doing everything manually. You can also create UTM links to give to the influencer, so they can say, hey, buy the product here, or you can give them a coupon code or something like that to track performance. And you can track it that way and kind of measure performance. If you have more of a lower funnel focus, but with a smaller budget, that'd be the best way I would recommend doing it. And then to look at it afterwards, you just look at who performed the best compared to cost and compared to time spent working with them, and figure out your overall ROI that way and see if you want to work with those people moving forward.
And I think that screenshot, I want to call out that screenshot idea. The idea that's so, it seems like it's too lowbrow to be a valid thing, but it really is. You actually ask the influencer to take that screenshot of how each post performed that you agreed to, and that's how you're going to get how you're going to manually calculate how well that performed. So it's good to know that they have that data, and it's good to know that they will provide it to you. Also, something you should bake into your contract with them to make sure you're going to get that data on the back end. So that you get those screenshots if that's what you're relying on to make those calculations. And we've talked a little bit here about, the creating that first campaign with that first little bit of budget. The idea is always the hope is that it performs so well and you get good data back so that you can be really smart about projecting out what's going to be the next campaign that you do. The hope is always that it's going to perform so well that you're going to keep doing it over and over again. And part of that metrics that Blake mentioned is UTM codes. I want to mention that Agorapulse is a big fan of UTM codes. We have a lot of information on how to create them and why to create them. If that's something you're interested in, send me a message and I'll give you some of the links to that really invaluable content that'll help you create UTM codes so you can track all of your campaigns, including your influencer campaigns. I wanted to make sure to mention that. So Blake, you've done this before, and you've had campaigns that succeeded and campaigns that failed. I just want to leave our people who are thinking about embarking on this influencer marketing journey what is a lesson learned that you can share with them? What is a pitfall that they can avoid with just a tip or two?
Ooh, so the first one we kind of already went over, where we were talking about like creating the brief that you're sending to the influencer. Don't be too micromanaging with the brief. That's the number one tip I always give everyone who's trying to jump into influencer marketing. Let's see, a couple of other ones. When working with influencers, it's important to remember that these are real people with real, especially if you're working with someone like baby products, like that example, like they have a family, they have, this time that they need to dedicate to their real life needs. Some people come into influencer marketing and say, hey, I have this post I want to do. I want the contract signed today, and I want a post in for review a couple hours from now. And it's like this whole video production that they're like, listen, I need to make dinner for my kids tonight. I can't make a video until a couple of days from now and send it to you for approval by end of week maybe. So managing expectations in terms of timelines is very important. Depending on your campaign, it could take a few days to a week to get a piece of content in for review. So definitely something to keep in mind there. I would say those two are the two major ones to focus on as you're first starting an influencer program.
I think that's great advice. And especially if you're in this 5 to 10K budget and you're dealing with influencers that are coming to you that already use your product, that's probably even going to be more relevant that managing expectations. You're talking about somebody, like you said, who has a life. This is something they're, maybe starting to do. So yeah, I think that's a great one. I think there's nothing worse than hurting expectations on either side. You don't want to create a bad impression in that influencer's mind either for how you're conducting business, because I don't know about you, Blake, but my experience has been that influencers talk to one another. It's a small, intimate community. You don't want to burn any bridges with anybody ever, but especially I think in the influencer community, it's good to conduct yourself and have all those best practices in place to leave the influencer with a good impression of you and your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely do talk with each other. There's a lot of influencer communities on Facebook and all these other social websites. I've been in the influencer business for 7 or 8 years, and I've actually done these type of chats with influencers to influencer communities. So there are definitely influencer conferences that I've been to as well. They're so fun. Highly recommend going to one if you ever get the chance. But they definitely do talk to each other. It is rare that they badmouth brands or anything. If something comes up, like if a brand like needed something quickly, like you don't need to worry about that part necessarily too much. But you're definitely right in terms that they talk to each other, and that can be focused on a very good thing. So if you're a very easy brand to work with, that's something that they mention very quickly, versus if you have like a shorter timeline there, they don't necessarily mention that stuff too often. But definitely a good thing to think about as you're trying to work with people, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's any industry. You want to behave in a way that everyone wants to work with you. I mean, that's almost you being an influencer yourself. You have a brand out there in the marketplace. It's good to keep track of it. It's good to be a good steward of that brand. That's just a good practice all the time anyway. So I think we've covered a really good primer here on how to jump into this if you haven't done it yet. And I wanted to make sure that for those viewers that might already be doing this, or maybe they are doing it for the first time, but they have a bigger budget. I know that once you get up to like the $30,000 to $50,000 range and above, you get so many more options as far as the tools to help you scale, the tools that will help you add this to your life easier. We've talked about a couple of them already, but I kind of want to go through the big categories of what is out there and how they can use it to make their life easier if they've got a bigger budget or they're looking to make a bigger investment overall in influencer marketing. So we talked a little bit about social listening. We talked a little bit about how Agorapulse is a social media management platform. We can certainly help you do that, get into your platform and listen to conversations and find influencers right in your own backyard. But how about identifying influencers? When we get to that stage, when we get to that budget, Blake, what are their options?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, gen.video is making a discovery tool. It's a very important part of influencer programs. So typically when you get up to these higher budgets, it means you're trying to scale up your influencer marketing. So we did talk about it a little bit earlier, but there are two different ways to do that. You can either scale in-house and have your in-house team built out and hire more people to run influencer programs and do more work that way. Or you can keep your team small and hire an influencer company to manage your influencer campaigns and have one or two contacts at your company that talks to the agency and lets them know what you guys are wanting in terms of the KPIs or whatever it might be there. So two different routes, either the SaaS, the self-service side, or the managed side. And it really just depends, again, on how high you want to scale. When we're talking about influencer discovery with the managed side, that company would do everything for you. So for instance, like our clients come to us and say, hey, I'm either looking for 2 celebrity or macro level YouTubers, or I'm looking for 50 mid-tier Instagrammers. Either way, we're the ones that are going through and funding these people. And then when it does happen like that on the managed side, we actually send you people to say, hey, this is who we're thinking of the campaign. Do you think this person fits your needs? So it's not just us, like contracting people and having them have content go live. We want to make sure that they fit your brand. So it's basically like you searching, but saving all the man hours and time searching, which is the preferred method. Again, depending on how you guys want to spend your budgets, you can think about it both ways. Manually searching, even through a database, does take way more man hours. So definitely something to factor in as you think about budgets and whether you want to do self-service or managed.
Right. And then once you find them, there are whole platforms and tools so that you could in-house manage them, including analytics. That's an option. If this is a route you want to go down and you want to go down it and keep it in-house, like Blake said, you should know these tools are available. There's, all kinds of platforms available to actually manage the campaign to make sure it stays on track and then that you have those analytics. And then there's this great category of packaged influencer services. So where you get a lot of this all rolled into from one platform, you can do many of these things. So where does gen.video fall into all that? And like, what does that marketplace look like for some?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely more focused on the managed services side, but we offer full funnel influencer campaigns. So a lot of the self-service and manage players in the business will say, hey, this is how many impressions or engagements or clicks that you're going to get on your campaign. Well, gen.video's managed services actually offers that full funnel sales tracking, especially for e-commerce brands. That's extremely important. So we'll bring everything around, you say, like the entire package of influencer services. That's a huge part of the package, the measurement piece. If you're going to run an entire influencer campaign with a focus on sales, but all you're getting from the agencies that you're running is how many clicks you got, that doesn't necessarily translate to your main KPIs. So something to think about when deciding which platform you want to use. It is more managed services, but we do offer sales tracking and sales optimization. So when you start to run paid media efforts, which is taking influencer content that they posted and whitelisting it into Facebook ads or Instagram ads, or any platform has this really, you can optimize on sales based on that as well. So you put paid media behind the organic influencer posts, and then we see how many people are actually selling with that paid media, and we can optimize that way with the campaign.
Wow, that's amazing. You take all that influencer juice and then you boost it with all this paid strategy behind it. It's such a high functioning thing to do, but it is the future happening already right now. These metrics are forming the foundation of a whole new wave of marketing outreach, and especially for e-commerce brands, that data, you cannot say too much how important that data is to your overall strategy, of which influencer marketing is a piece, and probably a bigger piece every year from this year forward. So we've covered some of the tools that these bigger brands with these bigger budgets can think about for optimizing their own internal efficiencies. We've talked about maybe reaching out to someone else to manage that for them. If you have that bigger budget, what is the place to start? What's the first decision you need to make? Do you need to look for a tool or decide if you're going to do a tool in-house or managed, or what's the first step?
Well, really, the first step is just seeing exactly what you want to spend your money on with your budget. Everything needs to be considered. Man hours is a big part of that, but people often forget. If you're running a SaaS program, you're paying your employees to go through and find influencers, to reach out to them. The influencer says no. Okay, now we got to go back and find another list of influencers. Maybe the influencers content calendar is full. That's the reason they say no. So you have to go in and find someone else. And then now that you have the influencers on board and you're going through with them and doing the creative briefs and disclosures and all these different pieces. So the first step is really seeing, okay, do I want SaaS or do I want managed? Do I have the team that can handle the scaled influencer program that I want to do in-house? All things considered, and is it worth it for me to factor in those man hours as well? Or is it worth it to have a company do this for me, since they have campaign managers that have been doing this for years, which is the case with gen.video, and that can streamline everything and make the man hours quicker. We can hit deadlines faster. It really just depends on what you're looking to do in terms of KPIs and what your goals are as a brand.
Right. That's a good place to start, though. Do I have the bandwidth in-house to do this? Do I need to rely on an outside resource? Obviously, that's going to be a great starting point for moving forward with these kinds of campaigns. So when I was talking to our audience about this live stream with you, Blake, I had a ton of questions about influencer marketing from the audience. And I wanted to make sure that I got to those today. You open for some questions and answers?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go to the first question, which is, when I pay an influencer to create content, who owns it? Do I own it, or does the influencer own it? This is a big one.
Oh gosh, yeah, that is definitely a big one, and it's a very, very common question. I actually did a fireside chat with someone from a legal firm that went over these exact topics, and to answer any specific questions, you probably need to ask someone like him, and I can give you a link to him. But so in general, when you're paying an influencer to make a piece of content for you, you're generally licensing that content. So it's you have a license to it, and in it depends on what your contract says, right? You can write anything in a contract in terms of content ownership. Whether the influencer accepts that contract after that's written in, that's a different story. But in most generalized boilerplate influencer contracts, the brand has a license to that content, and then you can repurpose that content in things like paid media, like we said before. So influencer makes content, you can whitelist it on paid media, and so it still comes with the influencer's handle, and you can repurpose it that way. There are contracts and there are situations where the brand will own the content after an influencer makes it for them, mainly for content generation programs. So influencers are more than just influencers, right? Like they actually make very quality content, especially as you get up into the higher level YouTubers and Instagrammers. Like they're very good at their job, and they're very good at making a product and a post look beautiful. A lot of brands see that as an opportunity to avoid contractor costs for people who are just video producers and not influencers. It might be cheaper that way to do it through an influencer. So in that case, if you say, hey, influencer, I'm looking to have a piece of content generated for me. I don't necessarily want you to post it on your socials. I just want to repurpose it on my website and wherever I'm at, a billboard, it could be wherever. But it's something that you'd have to bake into the contract of like, okay, now we own this content since that's what we're trying to do with this activation.
Wow, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That's such an interesting idea to have an influencer create content in a way that you couldn't do it in-house, but they never post it on their channels. You use it for other things, maybe for your website. That's really a genius takeaway. I hope everybody writes that down with their pen and paper, because that is a great idea and one that you should be baking into your plan. I don't have someone in-house to make this video for me. Why not pay an influencer to create that video for me? I think that's a genius tip that you've just given out between the lines there, Blake. So good to know. Good to know. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention paid to ownership of content and making sure that that's baked into your contract. I think that's a good tip. So here's my next question. I have a customer that loves our products and has asked for free products to run a giveaway. There's no cost to us beyond the product, which is about a $500 value. Should I write up a formal agreement?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Another legal question that the specifics might be better to ask someone in the legal field, but in general, I would say it's a good practice to write up some sort of formal agreement, whether that's even just over email, even something like just something, so you have something in writing, something in paper, especially when you're talking about sweepstakes and giveaways. That has a whole different legal side to it that, again, I don't know too much about, but there is some research that I can link out to at the end of the fireside chat that kind of goes over this stuff. In general, to answer the question, yes, have a formal agreement of some sort. You don't have to write a 3-page contract if you're just sending product and having them make an Instagram post. But in general, yeah, have some sort of an agreement.
And I think that ties into our earlier conversation about how important it is to be clear about expectations up front. So I think that's a no-brainer. Have something, and I mean, more for both sides being on the same page. That's just a good human communication practice. It's a good practice in general. Okay, my next question: what is always on influencer marketing? What does that mean?
Oh, yeah, that's it. So ambassadors are very, very common in influencer marketing. So when you think of influencer marketing, sometimes people think, okay, these 10 influencers made an Instagram post or a YouTube video, and that was it. That was the influencer marketing campaign, which is common. Like, people do that a lot. But oftentimes people hire ambassadors. So these ambassadors will sign a longer term contract, and they'll make a set amount of posts over a year, over 2 years. And whether that's a Twitch influencer putting product placement behind them in all of their streams, whether that's a YouTuber making a different post per month, it could be anything. So ambassadors are extremely effective. It gives familiarity behind a product. Say, oh, I know that face, and they're connected with X product. And that especially helps when you're trying to repurpose the content as well. So if you have a bunch of different productions that have the same person in them, even people outside of that influencer's audience will make that connection, and they're like, oh, this person is an ambassador for X product, and I like this type of person, or I like this influencer, or I like this product. They just make that connection, and it has a very good return when you look at it in the long run.
I love that. So I love that. Now, more good advice. So we've got one more question here before we have to wrap it up. It's been such a great session. I've gotten so much out of this. I hope our audience has as well. I'm going to pick from these last few questions, and I'm going to ask specifically this one. I think it might be the most sensitive one, and it might go back to the contract, but you tell me, Blake, what you think. I found an influencer to do a product review, but they require full creative control. Does this mean they could give my product a bad review?
Technically, probably yes, but that's never going to be an issue. So again, I've been in this industry for 8 years. I have never seen that happen. Influencers, again, this is their livelihood, especially when you get up into the bigger influencers. This is their livelihood, and this is how they make money. They're not going to reach out to a brand or accept a contract from a brand that they don't connect with, because their audience is not going to like that. And they're like, why did you just take this contract that you're just going to badmouth the brand? Like that's how you lose followers, and that's how you stop your growth as an influencer. And they definitely know that, and they keep that in mind. That's why influencer marketing, we were talking about this at the start, is so effective in terms of like trustworthiness and product research, is that these influencers take product recommendations and product campaigns that they connect with and that they know that their audience will connect with. So having an influencer with full creative control badmouth your brand, one, should never happen in general. Again, extremely rare. I don't think I've ever seen a case in my entire time in influencer marketing. And two, most of the contracts are, even though they have full creative control, they still send it to you for review in case of situations like this. So you will be totally fine. It's not something you have to worry about.
Good. And I think this is a great place to end this conversation on that, on reaffirming that idea that this is a mutually beneficial arrangement where both parties have their brand, that's skin in the game. So that there's, while there's a lot of opportunity here, there's also a lot of careful consideration that goes into the agreements and the alignment before it ever sees the light of day. So like you said, they're not even going to take this contract from you unless it's going to be good for both of you. I think that's an assumption that you should feel comfortable when you're walking into influencer marketing, that, you know, that's kind of baked into the whole process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Well, so if you've joined us today, I'm so grateful that you did. I want to tee up for you the fact that Blake and I are going to, Blake is actually going to continue this conversation with my CMO, Daryl Prale. They're going to do that on the 28th of September. So tune in for that. If you enjoyed this, you're really going to enjoy that conversation, because we're going to be able to dig into some stats that we've pulled together about influencer marketing that are going to give you that little final piece of insight to help you crush the end of the year, to do really great campaigns and to close out super, super strong this year. So I want to thank Blake for joining us today. It's been super wonderful to have you here. I'm so excited about the 28th.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Me too.
Good. I want to thank Nathaniel behind the scenes, because we could not do this without his genius back there pulling all the switches and making us look good. Again, please join us on the 28th. Thank you for joining us here today. This has been so much fun. If you have any questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Theresa Anderson. And if you have any questions for Blake, I'm sure he'll welcome that, and you can connect with him as well on LinkedIn. Thanks so much.